What a crazy week for Diablo, right? We get some Diablo 4 announcements, a new row. We get Diablo 2 Resurrected announced. We get, some Immortal stuff, if that's what you're into. But now, to put the cherry on the top, we get some Diablo 3 patch notes. And with this comes some pretty big follower changes, a massive rework to the Firebirds, and of course, Bones of RATHMA, as well as some nerfs to some things, and we'll get into all that in this video in great depth. So stick around, it's going to be juicy. Now, one of the things you'll notice right out of the gate here is they're not announcing a seasonal theme for Season 23. Now, I assume this is because, again, compared to past patches, I want to make that really clear. Compared to the past patches we've received in Diablo 3, this is pretty juicy by comparison. Maybe not as juicy as something Path of Exile before you guys even comment that, but yeah, this is quite significant. So, if you're asking me, would I rather have a seasonal theme that, lasts 3 months and it's kind of a gimmicky thing, or would I rather have, impactful, meaningful changes? Yeah, I go with this 100% of the time. But we do have confirmation that there will not be a seasonal theme for upcoming Season 23, but there's going to be a lot more stuff to sink our teeth into, more than normal. We have confirmation here that the PTR will start this Thursday, February 25th. And guys, if you're anyone that knows anything, you're going to be in my stream checking out the new necromancer builds, because they're already formulating. I'm telling you that right now. And so we get through all the the standard stuff that they tell us what to test, and PTR is going to last 2 weeks. So if it's going to start Thursday, then it should, if everything goes right, it should end on March 11th, and then hopefully we'll get a turnaround as soon as something like March 14th for the end of Season 22, and then maybe even a turnaround of March 19th for the new season. So hopefully it'll come up on the horizon pretty quick, since Season 22 has been dragging on for an exceptionally long period of time. But right out of the gate, we get the follower system revamp. Now, this came out of nowhere for me. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of followers, but the changes here are interesting enough to sink your teeth into, and they kind of sets them up for the future to do more with the system if they really wanted to. If people really like the system, they could definitely add more items to this and change things or whatever. Basically how it works is your follower now will get like a full inventory, just like your character does. So it's going to be able to wear helmet, shoulders, chest, gloves, bracers, belt, 2 rings, neck, pants, boots, main weapon, offhand, as well as the relic item that was unique to the follower. Now on the surface, that's not that exciting, because the follower basically is nothing as far as damage is concerned. For the most part, as it stands in Diablo 3 right now, you run the Templar just to heal you, or in the off chance you're running some sort of attack speed build, you need to hit a breakpoint, you run the Enchantress. And in zero scenario do you ever run the Scoundrel. And so, gearing them out with more gear on the surface doesn't seem super exciting, because again, they do nothing in terms of damage. So like gearing out their stats, you can gear them with cooldown reduction, so the Templar will, for example, heal you faster. And that's kind of been the play so far, but it really didn't matter that much, if at all. But with this new inventory to mimic your own, you get a feature called Emanate, which allows the player to gain the effect of the legendary items and set bonuses, keyword bonuses, so plural, on the hired follower. And then they give us a list of the legendaries that you can actually emanate. And first up, we have the Broken Crown. So whenever you put in, say, a topaz into your helmet, every single time a gem drops, you will get another gem that will be a topaz, which, early season could be pretty nice. Next up, we have the homing pads, which basically puts a shield around you while you use your town portal. This has been kind of a staple in, just torment farming builds. To maybe you're not a build that destroys everything on the screen, and sometimes a little pesky skeleton or something will come up and try to hit you as you're trying to port back to town, or even for bounties. Like for a lot of the times for running bounties, you want to go, you complete your objective, and you just want to get the hell out of here. You don't want to clear anything because the XP is nothing. And so homing pads has been a thing for a while. They just put a shield around you while you port back to town. So having this on the follower, it's nice. It's a little quality of life. Next up, the Spalders of Zakara. Your items become indestructible. I could see this becoming somewhat useful in a pushing sense, because sometimes maybe you play a really squishy build for pushing the leaderboards, and you can just zerg, and this will cut out that time you need to port back and you know, there's a chance you'll be naked. And trying to port back in general inside of GRs is pretty tricky. So, you know, maybe softcore builds rejoice. For the chest, the only thing you can run is a gold skin, which gives a chance for enemies to drop gold when you hit them. No way around this. This item sucks. This is not a surprise to a lot of people. I think to make this whole emanate thing a bit more interesting, you should add a Kane's or a Bourne's chest piece. Maybe that's feedback that we can give as a community to get that maybe added. But yeah, this is the only chest you can wear. It's pretty snooze. Then there's the Custarian wrist guards. Picking up gold grants experience. And now you might think, well, Fluff, that's some synergy with the gold skin and some of these other gold items. No, guys, it's not. This basically gives you no experience. It's terrible. So kind of a meme, really. Unless these get buffed. I mean, that's in the realm of possibility, I suppose. Now this one, I love. Okay, so you can run the Nemesis on your follower and get the effects of Nemesis bracers. Now, if you guys have been following this channel for any period of time, you know I love Nemesis bracers. Nemesis bracers equal more speed, more fun. Love it. So I cannot wait to free up literally the bracer slot of every build I've ever put together. This is pretty big. This will let us run, you know, Lacunis for more attack speed breakpoints. This will let us run, you know, even Crown's buff bracers to be stun immune. You know, some of the newer builds, you know, like the Bone Spear. Now the Bone Spear gets Nemesis, which is more speed. Are you crazy? That's awesome. The new set, which we'll get to in just a minute, will also have a pair of bracers, so this is a good change. And yeah, you know, the Pestilence benefits from more attack speed, so the Kunis are good. The Singularity LOD build, more attack speed equals literally more damage, so Lacunis are really good there too. Hopefully in the future, the Necro will get more interesting bracers in general, and this change will be even more impactful. But either way, it's good. This is going to be really good for us. This item alone introduced a little bit of power creep, which we'll touch on in just a second. Another pair of gloves is the Gladiator Gauntlets, which say, after earning a Massacre bonus, gold rains from the sky. And again, you would think, wow, Fluff, the synergy with XP and the gold stuff, that's really cool. No, it's not. And again, unless all this gets buffed, no, it's not. Gloves of Worship, however, coming in the glove slot. You know, you're pretty overpowered for Torment 16 already, but these are a really good Torment 16 item, especially for bounties as well. This just makes sure that shrine effects will last like 10 minutes. So you just get those little mini buffs and they stack and you'll have like permanent uptime on all of them. I like Gloves of Worship actually for Torment farming. So having the follower run these full time would be really nice. Dovu Energy Trap is basically increase the duration of stun effects. Not impactful whatsoever. I can't think of a single build that's ever used this item, so also kind of a meme. Raycon's Glass of Life. Enemies you kill have a 3% additional chance to drop a health globe. This was used a little bit in Diablo's history when Hodabard was the thing to generate more globes, but since then it hasn't really seen much use. So also kind of a meme item, especially considering the amulet that's popping up right now. The Flavor of Time will be a follower item that we can emanate. Are you kidding me? So like I said, between Nemesis, which is a little bit of a power creep for everyone pushing the leaderboard, but the Flavor of Time now, permanent uptime, pylon effects last twice as long, on top of the fact that you'll be spawning an elite every single time you touch a pylon. This is a buff for everyone. This is a buff. Imagine, you know, pulling 2 elite packs on top of a conduit, popping the conduit and getting triple elites on top of the conduit pylon, lasting double duration. That is huge for pushing the leaderboard. So yeah, between Flavor of Time and Nemesis alone is the power creep, period. Avarice Band also making its way to the Emanate. I do like this a lot. I don't love running Avarice Band on my character because, you know, you don't feel the power of running an Avarice Band versus like something that's actually giving you damage. But there's no denying the Avarice Band is pretty much a staple for Torment farming. You need that gold. And on a Necro, this is twice as good because, you know, increasing your own pickup radius increases the Aura Frailty range. And so this will just be good, period, for us as a necromancer. Creed's Flame is also an item you can emanate. Taking fire damage restores your primary resource. Another meme. And then lastly, we have the ability to wear 2 of the sets that are quite good for speed farming. First up, we have Canes. And the 3-piece bonus of Canes gives you a 25% chance to get an extra GR key, which, and you know, GR keys are really the most important form of currency in Diablo 3. just being able to spam GRs or more keys to fish the perfect GR for a push. Those are super important things. So Kane's habit, being able to wear and emanate that bonus is pretty huge. And then lastly, the Sage set, 3-piece bonus says double the amount of Death's Breath that drop. Now, this is really good. You know, a lot of times when I post a build, people are like, well, what's a Sage setup? I need Sage. Sage is, it's good. Don't get me wrong. But since the addition of Torment 16, you kind of have trouble if you run the Sage set all the time. You end up running out of Veiled Crystals or Arcane Dust. So to me, it's not nearly as good as more keys, but it's definitely good. There's no denying it. Getting double Death's Breath is good. Now, all said and done, I could easily see something like this becoming the meta for a follower. We did get confirmation internally from Blizz that followers can't benefit from Ring of Royal Grandeur. So there's actually no way to combine Kane's and Sage on your follower, unless they were to add, like we said, a Kane or Born's chest. That at that point you would be able to wear both, but in its current form, you cannot. But I think that this alone is really, really powerful. So if we examine this, you know, we got Gloves of Worship, great juice for Torment 16 farming, homing pads, great for Torment farming, plus bounties, giving you that shield every single time you port back to town. You know, run the canes and the helmet, the legs and the boots. Keys are probably the most important form of currency in Diablo 3. So getting more of them is super important. Run a gold skin because, I mean, why not, I guess? There's literally nothing else the follower can benefit from. Running a Vigilant Belt here because, you know, more cooldown reduction lets them cast their abilities more quickly. Nemesis, cannot wait for this to be a staple on the follower. Just so good at plus Flavor of Time. Like we said, that combination is a power creep for everybody. Fantastic. Avarice, just all around goodness. For Torment farming, you know, depending on your build, you might want to swap this for Unity for GRs. And of course, Oculus in the other ring slot. Arguably the most important item to put on your follower, period. It will spawn circles, you stand in circles, you get that 85% bonus damage. We are losing S of Johann now with the addition of Flavor of Time, but that's not a big deal. It was a nice little thing that would happen sometimes. And then probably gonna run Thunder Fury as the weapon, just like always. And depending on who your follower is, which we'll get into in just a minute, Freeze of Deflection. Now, we get into the followers themselves. So from the looks of it, it seems as though the skill system will perform exactly as it does right now, where you have access to 4 different skill sets and you have to choose between one or the other. The difference now is we get a different list of skills to choose some that are much more impactful. So for starters, the Scoundrel gets Crippling Shot, ranged attack, deals 140% weapon damage and slows enemies hit by 80% for 3 to 6 seconds based on the Scoundrel's dexterity. This part's really interesting because you'll see this across all the followers. Basically giving them more main stat will make their secondary bonuses better. So you want to sec main stat, which is pretty easy to do on items you're going to put on your follower. The nice thing about the Crippling Shot is you'll proc Bane of the Trapped if you are a ranged build. You also get a Powered Shot, which does an explode on impact projectile, 100% damage as arcane. Enemies within 10 yards and 100% chance to stun for up to 6 seconds. Again, based on dexterity. This is okay for like farming. I'm sure you guys know, but this is bad. Like you don't want to run any follower skills that will stun. Probably, depending on your build, inside of a Greater Rift push, because you'll make mobs immune to CC. They will get diminishing returns in how often they can be stunned. And so for a Necro, for example, this is particularly bad. We do not want to stun them unless we're stunning them ourselves. We don't want our followers to proc any kind of CC immunity. Hysteria, whenever you or your Scoundrel land a crit, you both will go into Hysteria, increasing all damage done by 3% for 3 to 6 seconds based on your dexterity. I mean, if you guys don't know, you know, crit is basically the only way you scale your damage in Diablo 3, so you will be landing crits very often, so you'll get that permanent 3% damage bonus. There's also Anatomy, which will basically just increase your crit by 4%. The multi-shot passive will make the Scoundrels special attacks have a 7% chance to fire 3 bolts. Again, I don't know that these are going to do any damage whatsoever. We don't know really if these guys will do anything at all in terms of damage, so we'll have to wait and see on this. And then most importantly, across all of the followers, you'll see basically everyone gets a cheat death, which is interesting. Now, whether or not you're going to stack the cheat death with your own or maybe that frees you up to run a different passive depending on your build. You know, some classes have way better passives than others. So, you know, maybe if you're like a monk or something like that, this is huge. But then if you're like a necro, it might not be as enticing. There's also Knight's Veil, which sounds really strong. The Scoundrel launches a cloud that covers a 20-yard area. It lasts for 5 to 10 seconds. All attacks against enemies inside that cloud will be crits. You know, we don't have any insight on the cooldown on this. And, you know, you can't really control your followers' AI. So can you really plan around this? Probably not. But if it lines up, sometimes this stuff all lines up, like the Oculus ring. Sometimes the circle will line up and be in a really good spot. That could be really, really strong. And 20 yards is not super duper tiny. So, and then lastly, piercing shot, a ranged attack that pierces and increases damage done to enemies by 10%. You know, flat damage is just good. I don't have to explain that to you guys. Templar, same kind of treatment here. It looks like the first ability is a snare, which you kind of already had. Another ability here for a charge that does a stun. And again, depending on what class you are, you definitely don't want to run a stun. A taunt, which is nice because, you know, the followers can't take damage if you give them the little charm that says they can't take damage. So depending on if you're super squished, this might be really nice for you. Onslaught basically got a damage buff associated to it. So basically, whoever gets hit by the onslaught will take 10% increased damage for 3 to 6 seconds. And then Guardian is basically a skill we already have, but now it's a cheat death. So when you take fatal damage to Templar, rush your aid, knock you back enemies within 15 yards. And the knockback is super annoying and will proc CC immunity. So I can see a case where Templar is no more, to be honest. I think that both the Enchantress and the Scoundrel will be better in all cases here, probably going forward. So, you know, Templar had its time, and maybe it's time to move on. And then finally, the Enchantress. Erosion causes a pool of energy and deals 330% weapon damage to Arcane 5-7 seconds, and they will also take 10% increased damage. Now, we can test this ability right now on live. Erosion, it's a pretty decent size as far as the pool's concerned, so this is pretty good. Focus Mind, already in the game, you get basically 6% increased attack speed, which, you know, if you're an attack speed build, which a lot of necro builds are, you might not know it, but, you know, more attack speed gives us more corpse lance breakpoints, more damage for the minions, faster spears. It's just all around good for a necromancer. So chances are an Enchantress is going to be best in slot for a necromancer. And there's going to be another little factoid here in a second that I think will drive it home. Powered shield reduces damage by 6% from range attacks, increases armor by 3%, and slows melee attackers by 60%. Or 6 seconds for you and Enchantress, which is pretty strong. This would definitely be really, really good as a poison scythe necromancer, because you will have a ton of armor, and really the only thing that kind of chunks you just a little bit is range mob. So that additional mitigation will be really nice, plus the permanent being the trap proc. New skill, Temporal Pulse. The Enchantress casts a guided orb that deals 100% increased weapon damage and slows enemies. A snare, you know, it is what it is. Again, this will proc CC immunity, so I don't love it. I hope with this new follower system, you have the ability to deselect skills. I don't know if you guys know this, but like once you select a skill in Diablo 3 on a follower, you can never ever unselect it, which is super duper annoying. So you can essentially brick a character because you selected a CC ability, and you can never unspec that ability. So sad. Next up, Amplification increases your highest static elemental bonus by 5 to 10% based on the Enchantress's intelligence. So this is super interesting. Whatever your highest element it is, you just get 10% more. And last up, I don't need to tell you guys how good this is. Prophetic Harmony reduces your skill's cooldown by 5 to 10% based on the Enchantress's intelligence. So basically it's flat 10% more cooldown reduction. And of course, a lot of necro builds are built around cooldown reduction. So, I mean, for me, my mouth is watering at the Enchantress. And then finally, Fate's Lapse. When you take fatal damage, the Enchantress empowers you to speed up your movement through time for 3 to 7 seconds to avoid death based on the Enchantress's intelligence. This one's a little unclear. It sounds like you just maybe immune to damage or immune to death for 7 seconds, which sounds really strong. And then the fact that it says it speeds you up through time, it kind of reminds me of like the shield that the Wizards has. So maybe there's like some shield or bubble shield that gets popped up around you. I don't know how that's going to work, but it seems really strong. So yeah, to me, Enchantress and Scoundrel are going to be mainstay depending on your build. If you're a build that needs cooldown reduction or attack speed, you're probably 100% going to run the Enchantress. And if you're not, you're probably 100% going to run the Scoundrel. I don't know that anyone will run the Templar anymore. Next up, this is big, team. This is something, if you've been listening to the New Meta podcast for literal years, not even an exaggeration, for years we have been asking for a leaderboard filter. One is that everyone that's on the leaderboard is running like probably the top tier build. There's been a few seasons where, you know, some class like the DH had a couple seasons there where multiple sets were competing for rank 1. But for somebody like Necro, there's usually one thing that's the best, and the top like 100 are all running that one thing. And so if your interest is, say, RATHMA or Trag'Oul, you're never really going to get that direction. A lot of players use the leaderboards, even if they're not competing on the leaderboard, they're using the leaderboard for direction on how to build out their build. So they'll have Trag'Oul on, like, what's a good Trag'Oul build? And they'll look at the leaderboard and they can't find anyone wearing Trag'Oul. So now we're going to get a class set filter, and this has double implications, right? So one, those players are going to be able to find a way to play a set that's powerful, which is fantastic. But two, not only are you going to be able to compete for rank 1 of the necromancer, for example, but now you're going to be able to compete for rank 1 on every single set. Immediately when you read this, you might think, well, you can't exist on the leaderboard multiple times, so really you're only on the leaderboard once. But we did get confirmation from Blizzard that you will exist on the board multiple times. So you'll be able to compete on one class on multiple class set leaderboards. So this is big. I mean, to me, this is really big. If let's just assume I'm rank 1 Bone Spear next season, and you know, I've got this crazy good gear I've been sitting on for all these other sets, and I'm like, I'm never going to run Anarius. I'm never going to run Pestilence. Now I could be like, I want to get rank 1 on every single set for the necromancer. And so my playtime goes up because, you know, I've got to farm out that gear. I've got to augment that gear and be rank 1 on that set. I like this a lot. This is something I've been pushing for since, again, I can't even remember how long. They also go on and say, you know, no class set. So there'd be class set, no class set, and then no class would be like the LOD builds. So you'll be able to see, you know, who's rank 1 amongst all the LOD stuff. So at the very least, you're going to have 6 different leaderboards to compete on per class. And so if you're, you know, an avid fan of leaderboards, which, you know, a lot of you guys probably are if you're still playing Diablo 3 at this point, then I think you're going to be pleased. I am. For one. The only other thing I kind of wanted out of this was like maybe an hour filter for the players that are maybe on a bit more of a casual spectrum, to be able to be like, okay, you know, I only played 100 hours. How'd I do compared to other players playing 100 hours? I think that would be kind of invaluable for those players. It's kind of like, you know, it's like when you run a marathon, maybe you finished 10,000th overall, but you can drill down into subgroups, right? Like, okay, I'm a female, age 40, I finished 8th overall or something like that. I think the stuff like that is, it's nice. It's nice to have. It makes you feel good. They also confirmed here that there will be unique rewards for this season. You know, in the past, they've just recycled seasonal themes and seasonal sets. And so like there was really no point in finishing the conquest every season because the rewards are always the same. There's nothing unique about them. But now they've promised that it will be unique, and they won't show us yet. So either they haven't finished it or they're just keeping it under wraps. But next up, we'll come back. We'll save the best for last, team. Okay, so Firebirds finally got a rework. 2-piece now reads, when you die, a meteor falls from the sky and revives you. Disintegrate ignites enemies, causing them to take 3,000 weapon damage per second until they die. So, you know, the meteor falling from the sky to revive you, that was already on the 2-piece. But yeah, this disintegrate thing is new. So the Cyclops beam that the wizard has will now make enemies ignite, doing 3,000 weapon damage per second until they die. This isn't necessarily a new mechanic, the fire damage per second, the ignite. One thing to keep in mind with this is if you've ignited an enemy and you move too far away from them off screen, the ignite would fall off. So probably, again, something to consider, especially considering the mobility that this set will potentially have. We'll get into that in just a second. You gain 8% damage reduction and 4,000 increased damage while ignite is applied to a target. So seemingly you'll have 100% uptime of this. Casting Disintegrate adds combustion stacks that reduce cooldown of teleport by 2% per stack, stacking up to 50 times. So eventually you'll be able to have 100% cooldown reduction on teleport. So basically you get Aether Walker for free on 4-piece Firebirds. So, you know, that has speed farming implications, or just even mobility implications, really, because you are going to be channeling with Disintegrate. So being able to move fast is super important. And that has good synergy with like Traveler's Pledge, Compass Rose. Since you're not technically moving when you teleport, you're staying stationary, you get that 100% damage bonus most of the time. And finally, hitting an ignited enemy with a fire spell other than Disintegrate deals ignite damage multiplied by combustion stacks. So, immediately I read this and I think, Etch Sigil, Death Wish, which is interesting because they seemingly work so hard to nerf those items because of Star Pack, but now they're coming back. Next up, we have a nerf to Dreadlands 6-piece. Hungering Arrow pierces a maximum of 2 times while wearing the Gears of Dreadlands. And now, if I'm not mistaken, I think that currently there's like a 5-time pierce, and that last pierce is the most powerful. So this is actually a really big nerf on paper to the Gears of Dreadlands. Obviously, Gears of Dreadlands was overperforming, especially when it came to missile dampening. But this might be extreme as far as nerfs go. We'll have to see how this plays out. But yeah, definitely give your feedback if you think that this is too much. Gazing Demise, the damage of Spirit Barrage is increased by 100% to 150%. Spirit Barrage gains the Phantasm rune that lasts twice as long, and the attack rate from Manitau Spectres is increased. So this is also a pretty big nerf. It went from basically 150% damage times 3 to just 150% damage. So effectively maybe like a 6 GR nerf for Mundunugu. But again, get on there, push with it, test it. If it sucks, let them know. And then this one is interesting, and some of you guys might not understand this one, but Blackthorne's Jousting Mail, replace 1 primary property with a random elemental damage affix. This basically, I think what they're trying to do here, make it so you don't have to make a Witch Doctor to farm a pair of Swampland, because Swampland Waders are the only pants that can roll elemental damage. So what a lot of people end up doing is rolling a Witch Doctor just to roll pants on, and then re-rolling those pants for their own class. And this basically makes it so they don't have to do that anymore. You can just find a really good pair of Blackthorns. So, I mean, this is a good change. Blackthorne still sucks, but this is a good change. And then last, but certainly not least, team, RATHMA has been reworked. Now, this is one of my suggestions. Pretty much since Necro's been out, especially since LOD has become a thing in Diablo 3. The way that LOD mages play was exactly like RATHMA, but LOD did it 100% better. And so literally RATHMA died the instant the LOD became a thing. And so RATHMA's been due for a rework. Tragul's definitely due for a rework as well. And then, Pestilence needs some love, no doubt. But this is definitely juicy. So 2-piece now reads, your minions reduce the cooldown of Army of the Dead by 1 second each time they deal damage. Your skeletal warriors spawn faster, and your revived minions no longer expire. So reading this, you might think, oh my gosh, we're going to get an Army of the Dead / revive playstyle here. And you'd be wrong. So the reduction of Army of the Dead cooldown each time a minion deals damage, that never really felt impactful. So I'm curious, obviously, as we continue to add more minions to RATHMA, maybe it'll feel better and better. But I'm hopeful that we'll be able to use Army of the Dead somewhat frequently, because it is such a cool looking skill. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Army of the Dead. Probably not, because it never gets used, but the entire ability to just like suck in a bunch of mobs with Death Valley has always been something that I've thought was the coolest looking thing in the game that never got utilized. But the second half of that, your skeletal warriors spawn faster, which is interesting. I guess that, if the benefit here would be if you die and come back to life, they'll come back faster, because it's not the fastest thing in the world. It's like 1 every 2 seconds kind of thing. So it is really slow, and I guess I could understand why they added that. But most importantly, your revived minions no longer expire. So that means everything you summon with revive lasts forever, which is cool. But I think we're going to run into some issues here, and we'll talk about it in just a second. Let's just get through the whole set first. So 4-piece, your minions no longer take damage. You gain 1% damage reduction for 15 seconds each time one of your minions deals damage, up to a maximum of 75 stacks. Now, that's a lot of DR. That's amazing. This is on level with Bone Spear. Bone Spear feels very tanky for a necromancer compared to every other set. So it's nice to see this set get that same attention. 75% is definitely what the necromancer needs. We are in insanely squishy class. But your minions no longer taking damage is also big. This plus the revived minions no longer expire means you're going to have at least those revived minions up 100% of the time. And then lastly, each active minion increases the damage of Army of the Dead and Bone Spirit by 1000%. So if we take this all into consideration here, Revive will give you 10 minions, so that's 10,000%. Command Skeletons gives you 7 minions, so that's 17,000. Working mages into the build will give you another 10 minions, but of course you have to cast those, so that'd be 27,000%. And then outside of that, I don't know that you can make a case for running like a golem, because that's only one minion and it takes up a whole skill slot. And I think the skill slot thing is going to be the biggest issue with this build and what they're trying to think of. And again, we'll touch on that in just a second. So yeah, obviously the point is just to have a whole bunch of minions out, not only to give you more damage on Army of the Dead and Bone Spirit, but to give you mitigation. And to go along with these changes, they're changing Defiler quizzes. No one knows how to pronounce that. Bone Spirit's damage is increased by 405% for every second it's active and will freeze enemies on impact. Team, I'm telling you guys right now, there is zero chance this item goes forward as it is. Blizzard doesn't know, I guess, that the RGK Bone Spirit is in fact a thing. If you guys don't know what this is, people will zone into like a GR and they'll spawn the boss, and then from all the way across the zone, they'll start casting. The team will be like, okay, the RG spawn, so they'll start casting the Bone Spirits, and then they'll travel all the way across the zone and eventually make impact if it's a very linear map. And the reason that that's a problem is because Bone Spirit deals more damage for every second it's active. So that is a problem. So again, there's no way this goes forward. They're either going to put a maximum range on it, or maybe they like the memes. I don't know. But it's nice that they will freeze enemies on impact, so it'll proc that triple bonus damage of Charisma and Sentence. This is vital. And then finally, a brand new item for the Necromancer. Bonds of Selena, which I assume will be a bracer. Army of the Dead and Bone Spirit deal 300% to 400% increased damage. Bone Spirit deals an additional 2% damage for 5 seconds each time Army of the Dead hits an enemy. This has some implications with Fate's Vow, because Fate's Vow will give you unconventional warfare, and you can combine that with other runes, and so you'll get more hits probably. We'll have to test this because we have no way of counting the amount of stacks we're getting right now. But I would assume unconventional warfare plus Death Valley would be insane for number of hits it's going to give you. But what's interesting to me is we don't see Fate's Vow in the patch notes as changed at all. It's still just that 250% increased damage. So I don't know if we're meant to ignore Fate's Vow. There's just a lot. When I've been theory crafting this, there's seeming a lot to try to fit into this setup. Yeah, but so theoretically, I think that the plan is, you know, you'll be far away, you'll start to cast your Bone Spirits, and then when they get closer to the target, you'll cast like an Army of the Dead, and bing, bang, bing, boom, boom. A lot of damage goes out, right? So this sounds really cool on paper, but it's kind of hard to fit everything into the build without more skill slots, right? So one of the cool things about Bone Spirit is you gain a charge every 15 seconds and can store up to 3 charges, but you get recharge time is reduced by 1 second for each corpse you consume. Now, the nice thing about Revive is I can spam it. I don't need any essence to cast this ability, and that's actually kind of interesting. Army of the Dead, it's exactly the same way. Doesn't cost any resource. Guess what? Bone Spirit, same way. I don't need any essence to cast this ability. So that's kind of interesting. What is not interesting is you can't necessarily numlock Revive because it kind of messes you up and it's not very precise. So you can't really get the benefit of the secondary benefit of Bone Spirit without manually casting exactly where you want the revive to happen. And then if we combine that with trying to, say, summon more mages, so you'd be like summoning mages, you'd be like hitting revive to get more charges of your Bone Spirit. It would end up being an extremely clicky build if that's how it's meant to be played. Plus, you're going to have command skeletons. You want to make sure they're commanded because you're probably going to want to run the Jessus setup. It ends up becoming a really clicky build, but not in like a fun kind of way, like just clicky. It's tough because Devour would be amazing in this setup, like actually amazing. And it would help you get the essence you would need to cast more mages back, because I do think you're going to end up running mages for, I guess it's 10,000% damage just to have them up. And so you'd have just like permanent charges of Bone Spirit. But the problem is, you know, you have to fit in Revive plus Devour, and they're both corpse consuming skills. So the synergy isn't really there. I think that this set might be trying to do too much. I think a quick resolution would be somehow to give you Revive for free. I don't know how that would work though. Like maybe Devour automatically revives a minion. I don't know. But then you'd be just constantly reviving minions, and maybe they'd never even have a chance to attack anything. And so maybe you never proc your 2-piece RATHMA. I don't know. It's just something we've noticed really early on is there's so many abilities that would work really well in this build, but there's just far too much we're trying to fit onto our skill bar, it feels like. But again, we'll be playtesting the crap out of this come Thursday. But that's basically it, guys. I want to know what you guys think. Do you like these changes? Is this what you'd hope for? I know a lot of people wanted a Revive build, but they probably wanted Revive to be doing the damage and not Bone Spirit. I do like, you know, Bone Spear was just basically spam spears, and it's very strong and people like it, but it's not the most enticing and enchanting of playstyles. Whereas this has a lot going on, but it might end up just feeling like too clicky for a lot of people. But again, we'll have to wait and see. Maybe it feels great once we get our hands on it a bit more. But that's going to do it for the video, guys. Wow, what a week for Diablo, huh? Can't believe it. As always, like, subscribe, come over to Twitch, ask your questions. We love you guys. Peace out.